The MLB offseason is beginning to be off to the races, and the entire league seems to be at a halt until Juan Soto makes his decision. With Soto clearly being the biggest domino of the offseason, the Philadelphia Phillies have expressed interest themselves, but seem to get some unfortunate news about the outlook from here. I'm going to break down what we're seeing in the latest reports, if there is still some hope for Juan Soto to land on this Phillies team, and if that is the true needle-moving move that this team does need. So to dive into exactly what we're speaking about today, just want to start off with the initial report. Shout out to my guy, Phillies Tailgate, tweeting this out from the article here, saying that the Phillies are not one of the teams that have given Juan Soto a contract offer. Bob Nightingale reported this morning that the Phillies, quote, haven't had a single conversation with Boris to express interest in Soto. Now, I think there's a little bit of an exaggeration here that I'm sure there probably has not been the formal, this is the offer, this is what we want to sign him. I guarantee there's a lot of communication between Boris and the Phillies front office, that there is plenty of overlap as far as players that are represented on this roster here. So I would guarantee there's at least been talking points. There is kind of my thought process. But to dive into the exact specifics of what the report said, did want to pull up this next part here that says, despite word from multiple sources that the reigning NL East champions have been planning a meeting with Soto and his representatives, according to USA Today's Bob Nightingale, the Phillies haven't actually placed a call to agent Scott Boras yet. Quote, oh, and after all the speculation that the Philadelphia Phillies are involved in the Soto sweepstakes, Nightingale writes about where the Phillies stand in the Soto sweepstakes. Quote, they haven't had a single conversation with Boras to express interest in Soto. Now, it's clear that Soto is the apple of the entire MLB's eye at this point. This is a guy who's an incredibly talented baseball player, coming off a season in which he had 41 home runs, 109 RBIs, a 419 on-base percentage, 129 walks, and 166 hits in 576 at-bats. He truly is one of the greatest baseball players in the sport right now, an absolute top 10 talent in the sport of baseball, and a guy who very clearly is just setting up for the biggest bidding war that we've seen. Obviously, Shohei Ohtani, a slightly different conversation. When we date back to him leaving the Angels and heading to the Dodgers there, it did feel like there was, more factors playing into this, wanting to stay on the West Coast. The Dodgers obviously having the money, and we saw what the figure of that deal is. Feels like Soto is setting up for this to be a direct, whoever wants to hand me the highest price tag, let's talk some business there. Now, if you pin me down and ask me to make a prediction, I've pretty much felt the same way from the beginning, that I cannot see him leaving New York. And when I say that, I more specifically do mean the Yankees. There is a lot of buzz about this Mets team, but to me, just watching that team go all the way to the World Series, him being as crucial of a part of that team as he clearly is, really a case for him to be the best player on that Yankees team throughout that playoff run, as Aaron Judge went through his cold spell and everything else. It would shock me if that didn't have some sort of unfinished business attached to it. Now, that does not mean that this is fully over here. And to acknowledge again that we do know that the Phillies plan to meet with Juan Soto. So just the fact that it hasn't happened might be it hasn't happened yet, not necessarily that it won't. But to dive into a little bit more specifics and give some context, did want to pull up this report here, this being from On Patterson's Tim Kelly here, and he writes, maybe the Phillies will still meet with Soto and Boras, although it would seem as if they were serious contenders, they would have been at the table by now. ESPN's Buster Olney reported Sunday that sources involved in Soto talks expect the teams will begin forwarding offers this week. Mark Feinsand of MLB.com wrote last week that there's a belief around the sport that Soto could sign before the MLB winter meetings, which begin on December 9th. Managing partner John Middleton did suggest earlier this month that he believes Soto was most likely to sign with one of the two New York teams, but seemed to indicate the Phillies would at least check in on the 5-time Silver Slugger Award winner. Quote, I'm afraid Juan Soto wants to be in New York, and I don't mind being a stalking horse, Middle said, according to Connor Smith of the Philadelphia Inquirer. At some point, if Dave and I get that feeling, we'll probably say, you know what? We're not going to win this because we've both been the stalking horse before. And if I were an agent, I would do it too. It's a perfectly good strategy. I mean, it's smart. But at the end of the day, I just think he likes New York. The guess here is that before Soto ultimately signs with the Yankees or Mets, a story will surface that the Phillies had some sort of due diligence conversation with Boras regarding his top client. But the report seems to be the clearest indication yet that the Phillies are probably not a serious suitor for Soto. So kind of a disappointing reality that I think we all had in the back of our mind here. It's always seemed like New York is the clear-cut answer. I still think the Phillies had more of a chance, and I mean, the money is a whole separate conversation here. We know what the going rate for Juan Soto is these days. There is a chance this is a contract right in the same ballpark of Shohei Ohtani. I think it's going to be at least $700 million. I think probably even climbing more than that if the Mets and Yankees truly get into a shootout for it. Now, by the same measurement, I mean, Middleton has been around the game plenty, that he sees how this works, that he understands this is about driving up Soto's price for each of those teams. And I don't think that's a bad tactic by any means, that I don't think there is any harm in being mentioned in connection to one of the top free agents in baseball history, really. Certainly the top one this year by a comfortable margin, and really in the conversation for my entire lifetime as far as a pure bidding war on a guy. So I like that they're being mentioned in that. I think that is a good thing for, a publicity standpoint, of a statement for your desire to constantly improve this team. And obviously, there is still a need for that this Phillies team is not a finished product there. And while Juan Soto might not be the answer, they better find one. So to look at the outfield depth right now, we know what we're dealing with here. That in center field, it's going to be the battle between Johan Rojas and Brandon Marsh there. Left field, all that is on the depth chart is Kyle Schwarber, who will likely be the designated hitter unless there's some crazy shakeups here. And I don't think any one of us are really rooting for Kyle to step back in the field, although I do respect that he tried his best while he was out there. There's Brandon Marsh, who's likely for that left field spot, Weston Wilson, and then when you look at right field, it's going to be Nick Castellanos there. That's not a lot of bodies here. That at the minimum, you need to bring in some competition there. And frankly, I think there's a pretty strong case, and personally feel you need to upgrade at least one of those spots there. That I love Marsh. I've been impressed with what he's brought to this team. That is a guy that I want staying around the organization. But I'm not ready to commit to this guy as an everyday just outfielder, whether it is center fielder or left field. I don't think there's quite enough there from the hit tool standpoint there. Johan Rojas, love him as a player. Do think he's a winning baseball player. The defense speaks for itself, but we do have to have a conversation about how quickly this offensive development will take. I know that he's putting in the work in the offseason, playing in a ton of leagues all over the place and trying to get better, but we got to see the results for this to happen here. Now, in fairness to the Phillies, they did try and correct that in the middle of the season by trading for Austin Hayes, who did recently speak on things to Ken Rosenthal here, and he said, quote, "I know I didn't live up to what I know I can do as a ball player. I want the offseason to fly by so I can get to next year and show everybody. This is me. What you saw last year, that's a shell of me. If I can hit 260 with a kidney infection, what can I do when I'm healthy?" Do feel a little bit bad for Austin Hayes because when he first got here, I could squint and see it a little bit. He exceeded my early expectations, and unfortunately, injuries and health issues really caught up to him. That kidney infection was no joke. Something that landed him in the hospital. Basically had no like energy whatsoever, and had some like pretty riveting encounters talking about like how bad it was for him. So shout out to Austin Hayes. Disappointed that it did not work out here in Philly, but not a guy that I have any sort of ill will toward. Now, with all that being said, that does not change the fact that this Phillies team still needs to get better. So part of the conversation here is, of course, the outfield, and Soto obviously ties into this, as that is the position that he plays out there in right field there as well. But I think there's a larger conversation as far as the face of this Phillies team. I think really what we're finding, and my desire for Juan Soto has really pushed me toward this realization here, is that Trea Turner may not be the running mate that we hoped he could be with Bryce Harper. Now, with Bryce Harper, we know what he brings to the table. Just this season, which wasn't even one of the best seasons of his career, finished with 30 home runs, 87 RBIs, played a terrific first base, showed some really impressive growth at the position. I think defensively, he exceeded my expectations and definitely the general consensus there. Now, to talk about Trea Turner, a little bit of the opposite conversation. It was a better season than his first year, but a 21 home runs, 62 RBI, 27 walks, 19 stolen bases, 149 hits, and 505 at-bats. That all while being way worse in the field than I expected would be the case. I don't think it'll ever happen, and in fact, I think it's pretty likely that this was in the conversation before he ever came to the Phillies, but I do think Trea Turner wants to play shortstop, and I don't think he's good enough to be a quality shortstop. Is he passable? Does he have his moments where he looks just fine? Absolutely. But he's not this, he's never going to be a Gold Glove caliber shortstop in the way that I kind of hoped would be the case when he initially signed. And beyond just, all these numbers, beyond just kind of speaking about the defensive concerns and just underwhelming across the board, Turner just doesn't have that sort of presence or moving the meter that you expect for a player of his price point. That when I looked at this signing, I thought he would be the certified co-star to Bryce Harper here. That this would be Bryce and Trea's team, and obviously there's plenty of other bodies, the Kyle Schwarbers of the world, and the Castellanos, JT Realmuto, and of course the pitching staff as well, that are crucial to getting to victory, but I just don't know if I can ever look at Trea as being that guy. Soto is a caliber of a player that can be that guy, but it is really concerning and frustrating to me that I do think we have to come to the realization that we spent that much money on a guy who probably will never play up to quite his price point. Is Trea Turner a bad baseball player? No. Is he going to be a guy that is responsible for winning this team a World Series? I don't know if I can go that far either. So there's still a lot to be done, but I do think that plays in the calculations for a lot of things. It is unfortunate that I think we are coming to the realization that this Soto Soto dream might be nothing more than that, just being a pipe dream right there, but we'll see. Who knows? Maybe John Middleton has a little bit more up his sleeve. I do think he likes to fly under the radar, so I'm not fully slamming this door shut, but definitely some pessimistic news in the short term here. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Are you completely out on the Juan Soto experience? Do you think that ship has sailed? And what is the correct move from here for this Phillies team? I don't think it's the worst thing in the world to have to shift from one big star to multiple key players. I think there's a lot of fixes that still need to be done on this roster and some trades that still need to go down as we have the conversations about the Alec Bohms, the Ranger Suarez, the JT Realmuto, who are all finding their names in trade rumors there. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Appreciate each and every one of you guys tuning into this video here. Make sure you're smashing that subscribe button if you have not already. Drop a like on this video. I'll be back talking with you next time, hopefully with some real pen hitting paper on this Phillies roster soon. Peace.